So hi, Glyn. It's lovely to
Hi.
actually meet you. I've seen your face so many times on Instagram and on the social media. I feel as though I know you, although I've not actually met you.
We did actually meet. We met at Country File Live 2 years ago, 2009, no, 2018,
That's right,
on
because
summer.
you were on the Ordnance Survey camp, weren't you?
That's right, yeah. And we met
Yeah,
up there
gosh,
for a short
yeah, I
while,
remember
yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I say I feel as though I already know you with all the things that you post, and it's great. It's great what you've been doing all the way through the lockdown and really keeping people engaged with getting outside and things. I've been looking at your website, On the Hill. What a fantastic title! Can you tell me a bit about it?
It started 5 years ago. Actually, no. So it started 4 years ago. I was approaching the age of 60, the golden age. And I've been walking all my life. And I realised there was no books about walking for the over 60s. So my wife said, why don't you write a book? Well, I'm not much of an author. So I thought, I do write websites. So I decided to create a blog, Hill Walking for the Over 60s, with the tagline, it's better to be on the hill than over the hill. So it started off as just basically a blog talking about keeping yourself fit for the over 60s, how the over 60s could manage with their poor knees and their bad backs and their arthritis. And it just developed from there. And that was 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, I launched that. And since then, I've had guest writers who have come and done articles. Most of them are older people. There's a guy in America, Parks, who's worked with Bear Grylls and many others. He's about 65, I think, at the moment, and he does expeditions, so he's been on the website and added his bits to it. But I just look around looking for health, fitness, adventure type stuff to put on there, which is appropriate, not just to the over 60s, but to anybody really, although it is targeted at the old boys and girls.
Well, it's fantastic what you do, but you're also an ambassador for the Ramblers Association as well, are you?
That's right, yeah. I mean, that comes back to the lockdown we're just coming out of now. What the Ramblers realised was that during lockdown, everybody was allowed to do their government-sanctioned exercise, what I call Hancock's half hour. And the Ramblers, as did everybody else, the Ordnance Survey, the government realised more and more people were getting out walking. As we were coming out of lockdown, what Ramblers wanted to do was to maintain that momentum of getting out and walking. So they created an 8-week summer campaign called the Feel More campaign. I was invited to be an ambassador along with a couple of other VOS champions as well. We're invited to be ambassadors for the Ramblers. And what we do is each week we take a different element and we try to promote it. This Savour the Glow, sunrises, the sunsets. Hence 3 of my images this week have been sunrise images. So we're trying to get people to get out there, carry on walking, encourage more people to get out walking. It's not about joining the Ramblers in big groups. You can go out on your own and walk. So there is plenty to do, and that's what the Ramblers have asked me to do, is to try and enthuse about it, which I do sometimes get carried away. You have to slow me down occasionally, perhaps.
Your website is absolutely jam-packed with blogs and ideas for getting outside. One that really interested me was the one about obesity, because you know there's been the talk, as you well know, about the link with COVID-19 and obesity.
Yeah.
How's that developing as, you know, encouraging people walking?
It's something which has been a theme of mine and my blog from the outset. I state in my little intro on the website and in the sidebar on it, I am overweight, but I still enjoy getting out. So a lot of the themes all the way through my website have been about encouraging people to get out for exercise to lose weight. But then with the government saying, you know, it is linked directly to COVID-19, there is a 7% higher risk of COVID-19 if you are obese. So we need to be addressing that. And over the next coming weeks, I'm hoping to put better diet plans up, ideas of easier exercise. I mean, we're not on about trying to get them up on top of the Southbound or up Scafell Pike or Helvellyn. All I want to do is get people out, keep them walking, keep exercising, and start thinking about a sensible diet program. I leave the diets to the experts. I'm not a nutritionist, but I can encourage people to walk. And if that's all they do to improve and increase their metabolism, then that's a great thing. It'll help at the end of the day to get their weight down. And that's important. That's something I'm doing, my wife's doing. I've been doing it permanently since I was about 18 years old. It's been a constant battle with weight with me, up and down like a yo-yo. But it's never stopped me getting out. And, I sometimes realise if I shed the amount of weight I'd like to, it would be like taking 2 rucksacks off my back, 3 tents in each. It would also help with my arthritis and everybody else's as well.
As you know, I use a wheelchair to get around.
Yeah.
And I sort of talk about, more than talking about wheelchair walks now, I talk about style-free walks. And that's because I'm getting a lot more people contacting me saying, I don't use a wheelchair, but I like your walks because I can no longer climb stiles. And by the nature of you being able to do it in a wheelchair means there aren't going to be those obstacles. It's amazing. I get people, dog owners, asking me about my walks because their dogs cannot climb over the stiles anymore. There's one chap that I was talking to, he said, you know, I'd never really understood what you bang on about with wheelchair walks and things. He says, but since I've had my hip operation, I can no longer climb over the stiles, but I do want to keep active. He says, so I'm now following you for that reason. So there is a new audience, isn't there? Like you said, that for people that still want
part of my target audience aren't necessarily wheelchair bound, but a lot of them, I had a group last year or the year before, a couple of old ladies in the village who didn't walk. I said, look, we've got a railway track, an old railway track, which is now a footpath. I said, just walk up there for about a quarter of an hour and walk back. And now they do it regularly. They get out without, they couldn't handle a stile. They couldn't even handle a simple step. You know, they're on frames or on sticks. I don't like stiles myself. Most of the stiles which I have to cross, and I did 3 last weekend, 2 of them almost collapsed, not because of my weight, I might add, but because they were literally rotting away. The owners are not looking after them. I would rather see removal of stiles. I don't like kissing gates either, because you can't get a wheelchair through a kissing gate. No. I'd like a proper fully open gate. If we've got to put some boundary in, it needs to be a fully openable gate. It's not just about wheelchairs, as you say, or dogs. It's pushchairs, prams, all those other things. Young children can't necessarily climb over stiles. So it's important that we do try to push that style-free walk. I like that tag. That's a good one, that one. And I think that's why I like watching a lot of the stuff which you do, because it sort of makes my mind think about some of my target audience as well. So I sort of feed off of you and then pass it on to others.
Well, I always talk about sort of 3 real styles of walk. I have my push doable ones that's in my manual chair, which for me to do sort of 4 miles is absolute maximum. I'm shattered. I'm not the youngsters that like Glyn up in Shetland that's doing 13 miles a day. No chance of anything like that. So I'm getting quite good at sort of 3 miles in a manual wheelchair, and it's got to be a good surface for me to be able to do that. So I call that my push doables. Or for somebody who's pushing somebody in a manual wheelchair, that's another audience to think about. Then I've got what I call my trainers, which is my trial rider that I put, you've probably seen it, it's an attachment that I put on the front of my wheelchair, and it makes it into like a little electric bike, which is great because I can get a bit of speed up, I can get I can get further distances, fabulous for things like country lanes, for going on towpaths, brilliant gadget. They also do it with the hand cycle as well, which I'm thinking of talking to Da Vinci about getting one of those, because again, it's a bit more exercise for me. And then I've got my 4 Seasons hiking boots, which is my big terrain hopper that you see me going up the mountains. Yeah. So I always think of like 3 different types of walk when I'm planning walks, because not everybody wants to be up a mountain. People want more than a half a mile walk. And so you've really got to think about what the audience that you're working with. And I think you've got it absolutely spot on. And there's an awful lot of overlapping in what we do to encourage people to get out and enjoy the countryside.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, we're maybe looking at different target audiences, but both have the same issues, same problems. Mm-hmm. And I think between us, you know, and between a lot of other people involved with it, we are showing a lot of routes. I've got a cracking route. One of my favourites, I might be doing it first thing on Saturday. Literally 200 yards from my front door, I hit this old railway track, which takes me out into the country, across the road, into an old army range, all open gates rather than stiles. And I can walk to the end on flat, if it was just somebody with a chair or pushchair, on flat ground, on good gravel surface, a 6-mile trip there and back. And it's an excellent walk. You can stop, there's wildlife and all sorts. So there is plenty of places around the whole of the country where we can get access to good flat ground without the intrusion of stiles and kissing gates.
Many of the national parks as well run a scheme called Miles Without Stiles. Some call it easy access walks, which are walks that they've identified as really suitable walks for people with limited mobility or people in wheelchairs. So it's worth people also looking at what the national parks are offering for an easier access walk. Yeah, and I do think there is a big shift forward to thinking about countryside for all. My motto is sort of making the inaccessible accessible. And it's not about sterilising paths. It's not about tarmacking the countryside. For me, I want now to start looking at the technology that's out there for people to be able to use. And there's such fantastic schemes around the countryside where people can borrow wheelchairs. A lot of the National Trust properties now have wheelchairs. There's a fantastic scheme down sort of your neck of the woods, the Countryside Mobility Scheme, where you can hire a wheelchair and go around, well, Cornwall, Dilston, Country Park. There's some fabulous locations. So it's also thinking about those kind of facilities, as well as thinking about your own walks and things. So I do think we're in a big shift.
While you've been talking there, I've just been jotting down a couple of notes about a couple of blog ideas I've just had now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start to develop it. It's something, I mean, there was, I know years ago, friends of mine was doing a university course, and that was about inclusion rather than exclusion.
Yes.
And that was sort of, I think that was probably the early days. We're talking back in the, maybe 20 years ago now. And that was the start of maybe people realizing that people in wheelchairs or the old people do need to be included in everyday life. So that was the start of it. And because I had experience through friends of mine, it's always been something in the back of my mind. So, and now that I'm looking to me with arthritis, knackered knee joints, a little bit too much weight, I need to start looking at ways in which I help myself. And one of the things I do now, I used to use them for fashion. Now I use them because I need to, are trekking poles. And the trekking poles, because I'm using my arms as well as my legs now, it's taking a lot of the pressure off my legs, especially coming downhill where the cartilages are jamming. But also the poles are giving me stability. And I think as you get older, you do lose your balance to a certain extent, and the trekking poles are a good way to keep you active as well. So that's always something else to bear in mind.
So whereabouts, Glyn, do you love to walk? Because I see you posting pictures of Exmoor, Dartmoor, Brecon Beacons.
I've been very fortunate. I started walking, both my parents were in the Scouts. They run our Scout and Cub group back home in Somerset. So from about the age of 10, I've always been out with my parents walking, probably earlier than that as a wee kid around 14, where I originally come from. So walking has been in my blood. And over the years, I was fortunate. I served in the RAF for 30 years. And during that time, I traveled the world. And while I was away, my boots, my rucksack always went with me. So I've walked in America, the Middle East, across the whole of Europe. And most of the UK, I lived in Scotland for 23 years. So I've explored large parts of Scotland. My favourite places, and I don't want to upset people. I know it's always a dangerous thing when you say your favourite place. But for me, it's always been Dartmoor and Exmoor, because they were the areas I was brought up on. South Wales, because it was accessible from Somerset and Devon, where I was brought up. North Wales is beautiful, apart from when it's crowded. Lakes are fantastic. The Dales and the Peaks, I love those, and I apologise to people in Northumberland and all the other national parks I haven't mentioned you. But I moved to Hampshire 6 years ago. I moved to my current location 2.5 years ago, and I'm right in the heart of the South Downs National Park. That is now where I really love walking. I haven't got the mountains, but I've got the hills, I've got the valleys, I've got the heathland, the fantastic rare heathland we've got here in the South Downs. It's lovely to walk around here. So at the moment, I say at the moment because anything can change, this is my favourite walking place at the moment.
Well,
and I love it.
And you do love a trig point.
Oh,
I have seen so many pictures of you at trig points with your bandana.
Yeah, I was going to wear the bandana and the glasses, but I think I've still got the shades there. So, but if I put those on, I can't see the screen.
Yeah, I didn't recognise you without your props on.
Yeah, well, you see now why I wear a bandana, because in the winter I get cold, and in the summer I get sunburned. There's absolutely no hair at all. So that's why I wear a bandana.
So what's your next adventure?
I don't set challenges and adventures anymore. I used to plan big expeditions. I did have a couple of small adventures planned for this year, but they had obviously got to get shelved. Apart from tracking down new trig pillars and giving them a good hug, I love doing the long distance footpaths. Not all in one go. I'm well past doing that now. I like to do it over a series of weekends. Last year I did the Serpent Trail, the Staunton Way, a whole host, I can't remember them all now, about 5 or 6 long distance footpaths. And this year I was going to do South Downs Way for about the second or third time. I was going to try and do that over a 5-day period, but that had to get shelved. So I'm doing sections of the South Downs Way this year. I'm looking at the Downs Link, which goes from the North Downs to the South Downs. That's a 2-day walk. It's basically sections of various long distance footpaths in and around the South Downs area. Because my wife's ill and she's still within the high risk category with the coronavirus, we're not planning to go anywhere away from here holiday wise. So we were going to go to the Dales this year. That's been shelved for a year or two now. So my adventures are going to be around this area. It's an area I love. There's so much to do. It might be the youngest national park in the country. It's got more footpaths than any other national park in Britain. And I want to do like a guy I met in the Isle of Wight about 5 years ago. And he had his map out and he just completed a walk and he had a highlighter pen and he was highlighting the footpath. I got chatting to him and he'd moved to the Isle of Wight 2 years previously and his aim was to walk every single footpath, public right of way on the Isle of Wight. So perhaps I could do that for 2,700 miles of footpath in the South Downs National Park. I don't know yet. It'll be quiet for a few months, years.
Well, you haven't been lazy in lockdown because I've been following your garden adventures, and you're always into your DIY and building huts and greenhouses. And is there anything that you haven't built in your garden yet?
You know, I haven't got a lawn or any flower beds. I love it. We moved into this bungalow 2.5 years ago, and we said that first priority was the inside of the house, creating that summer was going to be the garden year. It's where we were going to start. And the idea was, because obviously we didn't know about the lockdown and COVID-19, we were going to have a few pots. And the idea with pots is I can rearrange them as I get bored with the garden, easier than moving lawns and flower beds. Well, because we got locked down, it went a little bit nuts. I got carried away. Shed was already there, so I just cleaned it out and converted it to a potting shed. Bought a little tiny cheap plastic tomato greenhouse, which the first puff of wind it started to fall apart. So we then invested in this greenhouse, which you've seen me build over the last few weeks. And this idea of just a few flower pots and maybe a small greenhouse with some tomatoes is now, well, I've been out and bought 2 more pots this morning. I think I've got about 20 pots in the back. I've got a planter with carrots. I've got 3 tubs with potatoes. I've got more tomatoes you can shake a stick at, and cucumbers are going nuts at the moment. The only thing I can't grow is my strawberries. They will not grow.
So you have actually gone potty.
Yeah, nutted completely. It's a I know it's a good or a bad habit with me. When I do something, I don't just play with it. I've got to go head on straight into it and do it all.
Glyn, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. We'll just remind people about your website that you can go to get all the information about what you've talked about today, which is?
It's onthehills.uk. And it's, or just put into Google hill walking for the over 60s, and that comes up straight away. And it's about being on the hill and not being over the hill. You know, it's about getting out and enjoying yourself.
And how can people contact you?
They can contact me through the website. They can contact me via Twitter, at G4CFS on Twitter, or on Instagram at Glyn Get Outside. Yeah, that's the easiest way. There's a contact form on my website, and I think on Facebook at Glyn Get Outside as well. I lose track of what I've got. And
I so much look forward to meeting up face to face again.
I do as well.
I love doing Zoom calls, but I really am missing that human touch. So soon,
yeah, you can't beat all getting together as a crowd as well. It's a shame that the Get Outside Champion gathering in March couldn't happen, because I've done the last 3 gatherings and they really are fantastic. Social exchange of information. But something which a lot of people can do, I don't know whether you'll be there this year, or sorry, next year, is the National Outdoor Expo up at the NEC.
I'm going there, yes.
Yeah, that was one of the things I found the day. Yeah, in March, March 27th, 28th. Some unknown reason, I've become an ambassador for that expo as well. So I'll be promoting that over the next few months.
And I'm going to be there as well, so that's good.
Excellent. Well, I think we can have a gathering of all sorts of people up there next year. So that could be the place we all get together to meet. So
That's fantastic. And hopefully we'll get together and go for a walk.
Yeah, sure. That's what we need to be doing. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Well, thanks again, Glyn. A pleasure to meet you and a pleasure to chat with you.
More welcome. It's been exactly the same pleasure to meet up with you again, Debs. It's nice to see that lovely smiling face again.
I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Bye.